Before we begin, let me warn you, there is a moment in every woman's mind where she suddenly realizes she can't stop thinking about a man. And that moment changes everything. Not for her, for him. And if you've ever wondered whether she's thinking about you, or if you've slipped into her mind more than she'll ever admit, the truth might hit you harder than you expect. Because when a woman can't stop thinking about you, it's not cute, it's not romantic, and it's not soft. It is a psychological shift she tries to hide, suppress, and deny. But it always shows in three ways. And once you understand them, you'll never again doubt the power you hold in her world. It starts quietly, not with a text, not with a call, not with anything she does. It begins with something she feels. A woman doesn't start thinking about you because she's bored or lonely. She starts thinking about you because you triggered something inside her, something she can't shut off. Maybe it was the way you looked at her like she was a mystery you weren't desperate to solve. Maybe it was the way you walked away instead of clinging. Maybe it was the moment she realized you weren't bending your entire life around her mood, her attention, or her approval. That's when the loop begins. That loop is the replay, the overthinking, the flashes of you at random hours, the sudden questions she asks herself that she wishes she didn't care about. Does he think about me? Why hasn't he reached out? What is he doing right now? Women pretend they don't think this way, but every woman has a man who burned into her thoughts with absolutely no effort. And that's the key. The less effort you put into forcing her attention, the more uncontrollable her mind becomes. But here's what men don't realize. When she can't stop thinking about you, she won't act like it. She won't message you with honesty. She won't confess it. She won't even let her friends know the full truth. Women are too proud for that. They'd rather overanalyze in silence than admit they're caught. But internally, something happens that affects you, your life, your energy, your options, your confidence. More than anything she could ever say out loud. The first change she goes through is emotional disruption. She becomes unsettled. She feels a tension she can't escape. And the reason is simple. Women are addicted to certainty. When you give her nothing to decode, nothing to predict, nothing to control, her mind refuses to let you go. You become the unresolved question her brain wants to solve. The second shift is projection. When she thinks about you too much, she starts projecting meaning onto everything you do. Your silence becomes mysterious. Your distance feels intentional. Your calm becomes confidence. Your purpose becomes attractive. You become a man with gravity, a man she orbits even when she tries not to. And the third shift? Well, that one affects you the most. It's the moment she realizes she can't replace you. Not with validation, not with attention, not with another man. That realization rewrites her entire behavior toward you. Subtle changes you'll feel even before she acknowledges them. But here's what matters for you. The moment she can't stop thinking about you, your life changes. Opportunities shift. Your confidence rises. Her energy toward you intensifies. And you suddenly see how powerful you become when you stop chasing and start living like a man who understands his value. Now, what actually happens to you when she can't stop thinking about you? What takes place in your reality, not hers, that shapes the entire dynamic? That begins in the next section. Question for you. Be honest. Do you think she's been thinking about you more than she lets on? Drop your answer in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with a man who needs this truth. When a woman can't stop thinking about you, something powerful begins to happen. Not in her world, but in yours. And most men never recognize it because they're too focused on trying to read her behavior instead of noticing the changes in themselves. But the truth is simple. A woman thinking about you is not just a feeling she has. It's an energy you start to feel long before she ever admits anything. And if you've ever sensed that something in the dynamic shifted, even without seeing any obvious signs, that wasn't imagination. That was the psychological ripple effect of her mind turning toward you while she's trying to keep her pride from showing it. The first thing that happens to you is that your intuition sharpens. And this isn't mysticism, it's biology. Humans are wired to sense when they're being observed, remembered, or emotionally held in someone's thoughts. When she can't get you out of her mind, you start feeling her presence even in silence. That moment you catch yourself wondering why she suddenly crossed your mind out of nowhere, that's not random. That is the invisible pull created when a woman tries to suppress her feelings. Women think they hide it well, but men with a calm, grounded center always feel the shift, even if they don't understand it yet. It's like your instincts begin to wake up, telling you the truth she refuses to speak. The second thing that happens is even more surprising. Your confidence begins to rise without you forcing it. Why? Because her emotional focus on you, even in silence, acts like a mirror. When a woman is drawn to a man she can't stop thinking about, she unconsciously elevates his value in her mind. And whether you talk to her or not, that energy finds its way back to you. You start moving differently. You feel more centered. You stop chasing. You stop overthinking. You begin sensing your own impact. And that shift alone makes you even more attractive, not only to her, but to other women around you. Men underestimate how powerful it is when a woman thinks about them with intensity. It changes how you show up in the world because it subtly confirms something inside you. You were never lacking. She just finally began noticing what was already there. And then comes the third thing, the part most men don't expect. Your options expand. Not because you're trying to be a player or chase validation, but because the moment you stop chasing her and start living with purpose, you enter a psychological state women cannot resist. While she's overthinking you, you're becoming more focused, more disciplined, more self-guided. You become a man who isn't available to be controlled, a man who values himself, a man who moves with direction, not desperation. And that energy attracts opportunities, respect, and attention far beyond one woman. Meanwhile, the woman who can't stop thinking about you feels that shift, and it intensifies her thoughts even more. She senses that you're becoming the version of yourself she always hoped you could be, and it scares her, excites her, and pulls her closer all at once. But here's the real truth. When she can't stop thinking about you, the man you become is far more important than the attention she gives, because her thoughts don't give you power. Your response to them does. Some men waste this moment by chasing, needing reassurance, or trying to force what's already naturally unfolding. Wise men use this moment to expand, to grow, to level up, because that is what makes her thoughts unavoidable, unshakable, and unforgettable. But what triggers this whole chain reaction? What actually pulls a woman into this mental spiral where she struggles to get you out of her head? That's where the real psychology begins. Question for you. Do you feel like your intuition has been picking up something she hasn't said? Drop your answer in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with a man who needs this truth. The moment a woman can't stop thinking about you is never random. It doesn't happen because you were nice. It doesn't happen because you tried harder than other men. And it definitely doesn't happen because you impressed her with effort. No, when she can't get you out of her mind, it is because you triggered something deep in her psychology that most women don't want men to understand. You awakened a part of her that responds not to words, but to presence. Not to attention, but to mystery. Not to chasing, but to strength. And every woman, no matter how confident she appears, is wired to notice a man who carries these three qualities without forcing them. The first trigger is unpredictability, but not the toxic kind, not chaos, not games. It's the quiet unpredictability that comes naturally from a man with his own life, purpose, and inner world. When she can't predict what you'll say, how quickly you'll reply, or what you'll do next, not because you're trying to confuse her, but because you're genuinely focused on your own path, her mind becomes alert. Women are deeply attuned to emotional patterns. When a man gives them nothing repetitive to decode, their thoughts latch on. They revisit interactions. They analyze the smallest moments. They replay your tone, your silence, your confidence. And slowly, you become the unresolved equation she keeps trying to solve. That is the beginning of her mental attachment. The second trigger is restraint, not coldness, not indifference. Restraint. A man who knows his worth doesn't rush to fill silence. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't beg for reassurance. He doesn't need constant validation. Women notice this instantly. Most men dump their emotions, their intentions, and their insecurities onto a woman within weeks. But the man she can't stop thinking about is the one who speaks with intention and acts with control. He shows interest without surrendering his entire identity. He offers warmth without sacrificing boundaries. And that restraint creates a psychological tension inside her, a mix of curiosity and desire she can't shake off. And the third trigger is the most powerful of all: emotional safety without emotional dependence. This is the part men misunderstand. Women don't obsess over men who are chaotic. They obsess over men who make them feel calm, understood, and safe, while still being unshakably independent. When she senses that you can listen without losing yourself, that you can understand her without worshiping her, that you can care without collapsing, that balance becomes magnetic. Women think about the man who gives them emotional space without smothering them, the man who sees them without making them the center of his universe, the man who protects his peace, his mission, and his self-respect, yet still holds compassion in his voice. That man becomes the rare combination she fears losing. So when these three triggers ignite inside her, your unpredictability, your restraint, your emotional grounding, her mind begins looping. She thinks about you at night, during work, in moments she tries to distract herself. She starts catching herself comparing other men to you. She begins wondering why the connection felt different. And here's where the psychological shift becomes unavoidable. Once she starts thinking about you more than she expected, her behavior inevitably changes, even if she tries to hide it. And every man needs to understand those behavioral changes because they reveal exactly where you stand, especially when she's too prideful or too uncertain to admit the truth. What she does next will tell you everything. Question for you: which of these three triggers do you think you set off in her? Unpredictability, restraint, or emotional grounding? Drop your answer in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with a man who needs this truth. Once a woman can't stop thinking about you, her mind begins to influence your reality more than you realize. Most men think that her thoughts only matter to her, but the truth is, her preoccupation creates a subtle energy that shapes your interactions, your confidence, and even your sense of self. And this is where most men fail. They either chase, panic, or overanalyze, completely missing the fact that the woman who is stuck on you is unconsciously creating desire without you lifting a finger. That's the irony. She becomes emotionally invested before she admits it, and you become the center of her mental world without having to manipulate, persuade, or perform. The first effect is subtle but undeniable. You start noticing the little things that feel different. Maybe she's suddenly more present around you without saying a word. Maybe her tone, her eye contact, or the smallest gestures feel more intentional. Maybe she's responding to your energy in ways that other women don't. This is not coincidence. When she can't stop thinking about you, her brain begins to assign significance to your presence. Everything you do feels amplified because she is constantly replaying your interactions, imagining scenarios, and analyzing possibilities. This amplification is what gives you a silent, almost magnetic influence over her, one that men often misinterpret as luck or timing, but it's purely psychological. Her thoughts are fueling your perceived value, and the more you maintain your composure, your independence, and your boundaries, the stronger it becomes. The second effect is emotional tension. This is where most men get confused because tension feels uncomfortable. But in reality, it's a sign that she is highly invested. When she can't stop thinking about you, her mind constantly weighs options. How much attention should I give him? Should I appear distant or available? Am I projecting the right image? This tension creates subtle push and pull dynamics, where she tests you without realizing it. And here's the key. You don't have to chase or explain yourself. The more you remain steady, the more she unconsciously loops back to you. Emotional tension in her mind translates to increased attraction and a stronger psychological hold, without you ever having to beg for attention or prove your worth. The third effect is behavioral adjustment, often without conscious awareness. Women start to change their routines, choices, and actions in response to a man they can't stop thinking about. She might suddenly show up in places you frequent or engage in conversations she normally wouldn't. She might mimic your energy, laugh at your humor more, or unconsciously seek your approval through subtle cues. These are not manipulations. They're natural responses triggered by attachment, attraction, and the unshakable mental loop you've created. And when you recognize these signals, you understand something critical. She isn't just thinking about you, she is rearranging her life around your presence without ever admitting it outright. But here's the brutal truth that men often overlook. The woman who can't stop thinking about you will not necessarily make the first move. She will hesitate, overthink, and even deny her own feelings. That doesn't mean she isn't captivated. It means she's trying to maintain control over her emotions and preserve her pride. Your power lies not in forcing clarity, but in maintaining your calm, continuing to grow, and letting her mental preoccupation work in your favor. The more you demonstrate purpose, independence, and emotional stability, the more inevitable it becomes that she will either step forward or reveal her feelings in unmistakable ways. And this is where most men fail. They either panic and chase, or they miss the signals entirely. But when you understand the psychological mechanics at play, the energy loop, the emotional tension, the behavioral adjustments, you hold the key to turning her obsession into undeniable respect, desire, and even loyalty. You don't need manipulation. You don't need tricks. You only need presence, consistency, and an unshakable understanding of your own value. Question for you: can you sense the subtle ways she's adjusting around you without saying a word? Drop your answer in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with a man who needs this truth. By now, you should understand that when a woman can't stop thinking about you, it isn't about luck, timing, or random attraction. It's about psychology. Her mind, her energy, and her behavior all shift in response to the subtle dynamics you've created without even trying. And here's the truth most men never grasp. The real power is never in her thoughts. It's in how you respond to them. Because every woman who obsesses, every woman who overthinks, and every woman who secretly can't get you out of her head is subconsciously testing one thing. Are you a man who knows his value and can operate from that value? Or are you a man who folds under pressure and fear? This is where so many men fail. They feel the tension, the unpredictability, and the pull of her focus, and they panic. They chase, they overcompensate, they text, call, and explain themselves, unknowingly feeding the very loop they should be letting evolve naturally. But the man who truly understands female psychology, the man who sees the signs and interprets the energy rather than the words, he becomes untouchable. His presence alone deepens her thoughts, amplifies her obsession, and makes her emotional attachment unavoidable. That is the quiet, almost invisible power that men rarely recognize, yet it changes everything. Now let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. This isn't about playing games or acting like a hollow version of yourself. The man she can't stop thinking about is real. He has boundaries, purpose, and presence. He values his time and his life. He does not bend or break for approval. And he does not chase. Because when a woman can't get you out of her head, the very act of maintaining your autonomy, your confidence, and your clarity becomes the ultimate amplifier. Every action or inaction reinforces the magnetic force she feels toward you. And here's the last, most critical point. When she can't stop thinking about you, you'll notice it everywhere. In her tone, her micro-expressions, her timing, her energy. She may show up when she normally wouldn't, she may reach out in subtle ways, or she may behave in a way that leaves you wondering. That uncertainty, that tension, that is where you hold your advantage. You do not overreact. You do not seek validation. You observe, you remain composed, and you allow her mind to continue its loop. The more you remain grounded, the more the attraction deepens, and the more inevitable it becomes that she will either act or reveal her feelings in unmistakable ways. At the same time, your life changes alongside hers. Confidence grows, intuition sharpens, choices become clearer, you start attracting attention from people, opportunities, and experiences aligned with a higher version of yourself. And this is the subtle magic most men never notice. The woman thinking about you isn't the only one being affected. You are too. Your power, your presence, and your value escalate simultaneously, creating a dynamic where she is drawn naturally without you ever forcing it. So remember this: when a woman can't stop thinking about you, it's a reflection of something deeper, not of her, but of you, your energy, your boundaries, your purpose, your ability to remain calm, present, and unshakable. Everything she feels, everything she contemplates, everything she suppresses in her mind is your mirror. And if you understand that mirror, if you hold your ground and operate from strength, respect, and self-assuredness, you become not just someone she thinks about, but someone she cannot forget. Question for you: what's the real reason she can't stop thinking about you? And how will you respond to that power in your own life? Drop your answer in the comments below. Your story could help another man see the truth. Like, comment, subscribe. Share this with a man who needs to hear this.